Hello and welcome back to Chronicled, the history of Newcastle United. I'm Matt Ketchell, football editor at Chronicle Live, and we have a big episode here for you. Brace yourself for some emotional departures and some unwelcome arrivals as we chronicle 6 dramatic years at St James's Park. Last week we covered the Sir Bobby Robson era with some amazing Champions League nights, some heartbreaking cup finals, but this week we're going to see some seismic shifts on and off the field that will have long-term ramifications for the club. Joining me to discuss it all, as ever, is Newcastle United's official club historian, Paul Joannou. Paul, we'll get straight into it. We're covering the end of the Sir Bobby Robson era today. Can you start by reminding us of Sir Bobby's record at the club?
Yeah, well, Bobby Robson's record as Newcastle United manager was first class. After pulling the club away from the relegation trouble in 1999 to 2000, he rebuilt the team and achieved high placings in the Premier League. He got us to 4th and then 3rd and then 5th. And he also took us to the FA Cup semi-final, to the UEFA Cup semi-final, and into the second stage of the Champions League. Now, you couldn't get much better than that, apart from actually winning a trophy. And to part company with Robson appeared crazy. And as it proved, it certainly was. It was a huge own goal by Newcastle United's directors. At the time, Chairman Freddie Shepherd and major shareholder Douglas Hall. Newcastle had started the 2004-5 season poorly. After four games, they were 16th in the table, but it was very early days. And without doubt, United's hierarchy acted far too hastily. And looking back now, nearly 20 years later, it was really an astonishing decision. He was replaced by former Liverpool star and Blackburn boss Graham Souness. And that was the start of a period of instability and mediocrity at St James's Park.
Yeah, reading out those Premier League positions, 4th, 3rd, 5th, and the cup runs, and all in a relatively short space of time, it is an astonishing decision looking back on it. And I do remember feeling particularly underwhelmed when I heard Graham Souness was to be Sir Bobby's replacement. We had a new manager and a new look team, didn't we?
Yeah, there were new faces to arrive that season, including one of Europe's top strikers, Patrick Kluivert. He came from Barcelona. So to arrive was Nicky Butt, John Allen Boomsong, Stephen Carr, Celestine Babayaro, and a young forward called James Milner from Leeds United, who amazingly is still on the go even today. Souness made sure United collected points in the Premier League, to his credit, and guided United's lineup to another FA Cup semi-final, this time at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium, but the Magpies fell quite heavily 4-1 to Manchester United. There was also a lengthy UEFA Cup run, but in the latter stages, we lost to Sporting Lisbon after a pretty terrific tie.
Yeah, a really key player during this period, and one of the busiest in the team was Shay Given, fully deserving of a Paul Joannou player focus, I think.
Yeah, Shearer was a top goalkeeper. He joined Newcastle back in July 1997 for a 1.5 million pound fee, a pretty good bargain. He had spells as a youngster with Celtic, Blackburn, and on loan at Swindon and Sunderland. But he became Newcastle's regular keeper for all of 12 seasons. A great rivalry with Steve Harper, but in the main, Shay Given was the regular for most of those seasons. He could produce breathtaking saves, and he was one of the Premier League's finest keepers during Newcastle's best era in modern times. Now, he decided to join Manchester City in February 2009 and played on until he was 40 years of age. And certainly he left Newcastle too early, but he wanted to change after the takeover, and he went on to record 134 caps for his country, Republic of Ireland, and only 2 players have worn the United shirt more than Shay Given, Jimmy Lawrence and Frank Hudspeth. And but for his departure, Given may well have stayed and would have broken that all-time appearance record held by Jimmy Lawrence. He totaled, including wartime games, 507 matches. Shay got 463. So he only was 2 or 3 seasons away from creating that all-time record.
Yeah, I wish he had got it. He deserved it, but wasn't meant to be. Into 2005, 2006 then, and this was the end of two significant eras, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, the next 2 seasons were notable for Alan Shearer's last campaign before retirement and the end of the Hall dynasty at St James's Park. Season 2005 to 06 began with another mega signing, a record £16 million spent on Michael Owen from Real Madrid. And United ended a decent 7th placing, with Shearer breaking Jackie Milburn's long-standing career goal-scoring record for United. During that season, another 11 million had been spent on Spaniard Albert Luque, but in the final analysis, both Owen and Luque were far from being a success. Owen, though, when fit and alongside Shearer, he did form a formidable partnership, but the ex-Liverpool striker was too often on the sidelines. And in the end, £16 million at the time was a huge amount for someone who wasn't a regular starter. And by the end of the season, Graham Souness had departed, and he was replaced by former skipper Glenn Roeder, who was on the coaching staff at the time.
At least Shearer went out in style, didn't he?
He did. His last and 206 goals for United, fittingly perhaps, was in a 4-1 victory at Sunderland in his very last game, as he was injured in that match and never played for the club again. He was given a wonderful send-off against Glasgow Celtic before a capacity crowd at the end of the season, and he spent such a wonderful time in a black and white shirt.
He did, and I've got actually a newspaper clipping here from the Daily Mirror, 18th of April 2006, and it's our colleague here at Reach, Simon Bird's match report from that game at the stadium. I'll read a bit of it here. It's headlined, "How typical of Shearer, he bows out with a goal. Alan Shearer's last meaningful kick of his career is likely to be a match-winning penalty against the old enemy Sunderland. What a way for a Geordie legend to go. All body battered, leading a charging comeback victory and a goal to his name. Exit Alan Shearer in typical style. His 206 goal for Newcastle out of 409 career goals sent United on their way to their biggest win in a Tyne-Wear derby in 50 years and ensured a heroic farewell for a giant of the modern game. 9 minutes later, Shearer's last act as a player was to limp off the Stadium of Light pitch after being nobbled by Sunderland's Julio Arca and falling awkwardly. The knee injury is a serious one, and he is virtually certain not to feature in United's remaining 3 games. A scan should confirm the worst today. Instead of a tear-jerking farewell in May against Chelsea in front of his own St James's Park crowd, Shearer was ushered off to a chorus of boos by Sunderland's humiliated fans. In the dressing room later, he was said to be despondent, but after reflection, he will take the jeers as a satisfying tribute. After carrying his hometown club for a decade, breaking Jackie Milburn's club scoring record and serving his own people with professionalism and pride, it was fitting that Shearer went out in a full-blooded combat of a local derby. He was hobbling around with a ligament damaged, and then still tried to make a tackle on a Sunderland player. Even in that state, that is why he is the man he is and has achieved what he has, said boss Glenn Roeder. A senior career that began with a debut hat-trick for Southampton on April 14th, 1988, as a 17-year-old ended almost 18 years to the day. Shearer's injury eclipsed an amazing comeback by Newcastle to claim Roeder's 8th win in 12 Premiership games in charge, lifting them to 7th spot and breathing down Blackburn's neck for the last UEFA Cup place. So yes, one of my favourite ever Newcastle games, beating Sunderland 4-1 in their own stadium. Doesn't get much better. And we obviously, Paul, have to do a player focus on Alan.
Well, little needs to be said about Alan Shearer, really. He was modern football's perfect number 9, to be honest. Newcastle United's all-time record goal scorer in league and cup football. He joined us, of course, in a £15.6 million purchase. Not just 15 million, it was actually a bit more than that. Straight after Euro 96 from Blackburn Rovers, after he'd lifted the Premier League title and scored 130 goals at Ewood Park. A tough competitor, lethal finisher in and out of the box, and a real leader on and off the field. Thoroughly professional, dedicated, and with a love of Newcastle United and wearing that famous number 9 shirt. 63 caps and 30 goals for England, captain of club and country, maybe Newcastle's best ever centre forward. With a formidable record, 405 appearances and 206 goals in senior matches. So you don't get much better than that at all. And I don't think we'll ever see another centre forward like that in our lifetime. That's for certain.
Yes, well said. And yeah, you're probably right. One once in a lifetime player. Life without Alan then, how did it begin?
Well, the following campaign of 2006-07 was certainly strange without Shearer in the number 9 shirt. Newcastle had signed Obafemi Martins for £10 million as his replacement, and for a while he did well. It was an average season, United being a long, long way off the heady days of the Champions League football under Bobby Robson. And at the end of the season, Rhoda was axed and yet another manager arrived at Gallagher, and that was Big Sam Allardyce. But just as he was getting used to being in charge, the Halls sold their majority stake in the club to London-based retailer and billionaire Mike Ashley. Freddie Shepherd was reluctantly forced to sell up too, and Newcastle United entered a brand new world of all things Sports Direct.
Yes, quite fitting that at the time of recording this, December 2021, the last Sports Direct signs actually being removed from St James's Park. The era from 2007 onwards, not a very happy time, but we're chronicling the entire history of the club, so it must be acknowledged. How did it all begin, Paul?
As the football started for season 2007-08, gone were the days of competing with the top clubs in the country. By January, in the opening of 2008, Allardyce was sacked, and the third coming of Kevin Keegan began. But one to be a short and controversial stay at St James's Park. United ended in mid-table with many new faces, including the likes of Joey Barton, Mark Viduka, Alan Smith, Jose Enrique, Jeremy, Habib Bai, and one or two others. Kevin Keegan's third and last spell at St James's Park was, fractured by a major rift behind the scenes as the new 2008-09 season began. The ever-popular Keegan never being on the same wavelength with the owner and his director of football, ex-Chelsea man Dennis Wise. Keegan left in September 2008 and later won an arbitration hearing over his exit.
Yeah, he did. And crazy to look back at this chain of events, really, and even crazier to think who the board turned to replace the most popular manager at Newcastle in the modern era.
Yeah, a bizarre short-term appointment of Joe Kinnear. In that arrival flabbergasted all, and United dropped into the relegation zone as the club appeared to go from crisis to crisis. As Kinnear departed pretty quickly, Alan Shearer was handed something of a poisoned chalice in a late bid to save United from the drop. He had only 8 games to turn things around. It didn't work, and United were relegated after 16 seasons in the top flight, and most of those seasons were at the very top end, challenging with the very best. And once more, many new faces arrived, some decent, some poor signings included. Argentinians Colaccini and Gutierrez were 2 of the better new men. Also to wear the black and white were Kevin Nolan, Danny Guthrie, Peter Lovenkrands, Ryan Taylor, and 2 big misfits Kevin Keegan never wanted, Cisco and Gonzalez. The new owner, Mike Ashley, had a torrid period in time in charge at that time. It was the start of a turbulent decade, and more of his reign at St James's Park would end up in a rift between the supporters and the club and the owner, and one that would get bigger and more bitter as the next decade unfolded.
Yes, what a mess. I remember finding it difficult to get my head around the fact Newcastle had been relegated to the second tier again. Kevin Keegan's promotion season of 92-93 was my only experience of Newcastle in the second tier, but there they were, down there, and there was pressure on to bounce back up because the financial ramifications didn't bear thinking about, did they?
Yeah, it was a difficult time, and Newcastle certainly needed to bounce straight back into the Premier League. The manager's job went to coach Chris Hughton, and in 2009-10 he became he did a very good job. He was remarkably United's 10th manager in a dozen years. The former Tottenham fullback rejuvenated the Black and Whites, winning the championship title with ease. And the club were a class apart, a division lower. A lot of the players had Premier League experience, and it proved when they were playing those teams in the championship. Colaccini and Gutierrez were key players, as was Nicky Butt, Kevin Nolan, and a new, young, robust centre forward called Andy Carroll hit almost 40 goals between them, with Peter Lovenkrands grabbing 16. So there was plenty of goals as Newcastle eased through the promotion challenge. Newcastle were back in the Premier League, and the big question was, could they get back to challenging at the top in the elite of football?
Well, we'll find out next week when the Newcastle United roller coaster arrives into the ups and downs of the 2010s. That was a big chapter there, Paul. Newcastle have lost Bobby Robson and Alan Shearer and the Shepherd Hall dynasty, and they've gained Mike Ashley as an owner, and they've been relegated, but thankfully gained promotion back to the top flight. But the club looks vastly different from the one in 2004 that we began discussing at the start of this episode. So thanks everyone for listening to this one. Stay subscribed to Everything is Black and White podcast via whichever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Hit that notification bell so you get all of our podcasts as soon as they land, and follow us on social media. We're at Chronicled NUFC on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's video versions of the podcasts. All the episodes are available to watch on our YouTube channel, which is also called theEIBWpodcast. And remember, stay up to date with everything black and white by subscribing to our daily Newcastle United newsletters here at Chronicle Live. They are completely free, and there's a link to sign up to these in our show notes at the bottom of this episode. If you tap that and select Sport Newcastle United Updates, you can enter your email address and be signed up to receive all the best Newcastle United content from chroniclelive.co.uk every single day. So yeah, thanks so much for listening to Chronicled, the history of Newcastle United, with me, Matt Ketchell, and Paul Joannou.